Denver, one of the most outspoken sanctuary cities, it's at a point now with its budget where it's going to close 4 immigrant shelters, starting with the Aurora one next week. Aurora basically said, we don't want any part of this. Denver, you take care of it. Now Denver is kicking people out, 30 and 60-day stays, closing down shelters. Are they still a sanctuary city? Who knows? We've got shenanigans in Denver. Let's get into it. Here we go. Next week, when Denver begins closing shelters used to temporarily house immigrants, officials will start with the shelter in Aurora that has driven a wedge between the two cities. Now, Aurora's got common sense. Denver is going down a crazy train of poor decisions and just what happened? I mean, literally, what happened? You could say the same thing about Seattle. I kind of know what happened in Seattle. We had this massive influx from California. They brought all these liberal positions, and you went from a conservative logging and fishing, area to blue hair is great. Marry whoever you want. It's all good. The shelter is one of 4 hotels that Denver Mayor Mike Johnston said earlier this week the city would be shuttering over the next month, a move that is expected to slash the city's projected $180 million spending on the illegal immigration crisis by $60 million. But where are all those people going that are getting booted out of these shelters that are closing? Where are they going? How's that looking? Because, that's what it's like, but you wanted this. You wanted this. You self-proclaimed you're a sanctuary city. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, good Lord, this is expensive. Human beings are expensive. At least one Aurora official said Friday that the move was a little too little, too late. A little too little, too late. Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky, also who sponsored the immigration resolution approved earlier this week, called the closure a joke. Uh-oh, we've got diametrically opposed opinions here. I don't know what it is exactly that they're closing, Jurinsky said. Most of the people have already left because they were told you have to get out. In fact, Denver has been winding down its shelter operations in Aurora over the past 2 months. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman said on December 12th in a Facebook post, the Denver officials agreed to close the shelter. You imagine you just stick a shelter in some other community and say, hey, yeah, we're a sanctuary city. Yeah, but we're not located in your city. Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, could you give us a couple of months and we'll try and get those shelters out of there? I deeply appreciate that Mayor Johnston not only agreed to stop busing any more migrants to the hotel, but that he also agreed to pick up the migrants who are currently staying there when their vouchers expire. You're seeing this happen in Chicago. You're seeing this happen in New York City. And we've had the tide turn. We've had the tide turn. But what happens when we get back to that 300,000 in a month? If we have that happen. Right now, we're at 140,000 coming across the southern border in a month. 140,000. Double that, 280,000. They're going to have to go somewhere. Denver's going to pick up a bunch. Chicago's going to pick up a bunch. New York City's going to pick up a bunch. What is that going to look like? If we have the border happen like we did last fall, October, November, December, if that happens again, that will wildly impact the 2024 elections because you're going to have so many people on opposing sides of who they're going to vote for, pointing at this going, what are we doing here? What's going on here? So will it be the perfect storm? I can see that happening. Will that happen? I'm going to pull a Tim Pool, which is, I can absolutely see that happening. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah. What do I know? I'm just a, pundit that speaks on the internet. No, I think it could happen. Will it happen? High probability. That's where I'd go with. Yeah, I can see this happening. I can see this taking place. And, the media trying to hide it. What illegal immigrants? Well, you got 11,000 a day coming through right now. So the issue nabbed headlines after the hotel to make room for immigrants booted out long-term residents like Joe Sacida, who had been living in the Aurora Hotel for a year. We are hearing more and more here people locally in Seattle that have rented a hotel room being asked to leave, saying, hey, we got to give it up to a migrant. That doesn't seem very fair, right? It's just not. But what you're having happen in the sanctuary cities is the, competition for resources, meaning housing. In all these cities, you do not have enough housing because you have constricted construction and development to the point where you're always so far behind. Earlier this week, the Aurora City Council made a symbolic statement that it was not a sanctuary city when it passed a resolution demanding other cities and organizations not systematically transport migrants or people experiencing homelessness into their city without first coordinating with Aurora. Remember when Let's Go Brandon Johnson and then Eric Adams, they put in a bunch of, all right, you can only drop them off between 8:30 and noon, Monday through Friday, none on the weekends. Got to give us a 32-hour heads up that they're coming. Otherwise, we're going to fine your bus drivers. We're going to impound their buses. Just not very sanctuary city-like, right? They were trying to stem the flow of all these people coming into their community. Let's watch a little video.
More than 2,000 migrants are in Denver shelters tonight, but their time is running out.
Some are now finding themselves on the streets in these freezing temperatures. Denver 7's Christian Lopez spoke with migrant families today asking for help.
I'm from Colombia and she's from Venezuela.
¿Cuánto tiempo tienen en Denver?
We've been in Denver approximately a month.
I spoke to Freyman Escorcia and his wife Nadelis, who say their time at this Denver shelter is running out.
When your time is up, they kick you out. There's no help when you get out.
Let's look at that for 1 second. I don't normally stop these. You got snow on the ground. You've got drifts on the side. These are not four-season tents. You got some cold temperatures. This is miserable, right? It just is. Meanwhile, Denver's closing down shelters willy-nilly.
There's no help when you get out.
All while also counting down
She's 7 months pregnant.
to the birth of their child. They're worried about ending up on the streets, like dozens of other migrant families now living in this large encampment at Spear and Zuni.
A lot of people outside who have been kicked out, they have nowhere to go, so they're out here with these temperatures. It's concerning because there's kids and pregnant women like her.
Concerning.
Many families who are staying in these tents tell us that they were previously living in this hotel, but they were kicked out because their time ran out. They tell us the only reason they're getting by is because of generous community members like these who are constantly stopping by and delivering food and other donations. They're urging the city of Denver to do more to help. They tell us work permits.
I bet you if they help all these people get work permits, you wouldn't see all of this out here.
Are a major obstacle.
We're simply asking for help.
I'm going to stop this for 1 second here. The problem I have with that is that now you've got people that we haven't vetted, that we don't know, working in the community. That's why this isn't going the way it should. You're rushing all of this because the sanctuary cities have, on the front end said, yeah, come on in. And then they realize, oh, good Lord, this is expensive. Whack, 4 of these shelters. We're going to save ourselves $60 million because we didn't plan ahead. And now the migrants are like, hey, they brought us here. But if we could just get jobs, it's like, okay, yeah, none of this stuff is in sequence, is what I'm saying. None of this stuff is in sequence. Remain in Mexico, hang out in Mexico till you get your court hearing. Just one of the few things. Not do the mass release of parole. Those are things that I blame the Biden administration for having opened up.
We know how to work. A lot of people outside with this cold is a cruel thing.
As it stands now, families have 37 days before they're forced out. Individuals only have 15. While the city of Denver says it hasn't forced anyone out in the last week, clearly many are still left out in the cold. Reporting in Denver, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
It is so heartbreaking to see kids out there like that. And Denver Mayor Mike Johnston took Denver's migrant crisis to the White House earlier this month. Mayor Mike Johnston joined Chicago's mayor to meet with the president's chief of staff and the senior advisor managing the migrant response. Johnston says his top request was for the federal government to increase migrant work authorization.
And meanwhile, Denver is activating 2 overnight shelters tonight. The New Directions Ballroom on Quebec Street, that is the former Best Western Hotel, as well as the Denver.
These people. What if you just had normal border policy and you had a system and you didn't just bring in 8 million people over the course of a handful of years? What if you did that? What if that happened? That's too logical. We can't have that. That's a hard no-go. That is just a no-go. This is a brand new story that just came out. Homeless migrants in Denver returning to the streets. This is continuation kind of on the whole thing that's happening with Denver. Hey, what I can say from here, this is an alleyway or in front of a store or something like that, right? At least there's no snow. I mean, conditions... These sanctuary cities, they're come on in. Oh, wait a minute. No, you got to go. Yeah, there's snow here. It snows in Denver. It snows in Chicago. Sorry about that. You know, the whole budget thing, just so much lack of communication, so much lack of planning, so many shenanigans just happening because that's what happens when you don't plan anything. It's just like, we're bleeding hearts. Bring them all in. We love our fellow human being. Let's just give them all jobs. Let's just give them all more resources. We don't even know if half these people are going to be here after their immigration hearing. They might get deported. You know, Trump says he's going to deport them all. Biggest deportation ever. I don't really see that happening either. But what you got going on right now is just a cluster, right? Migrants from Venezuela who have been pouring into Denver since last year, they're back on the streets as they reach their shelter stay limits and must leave, an advocate for people experiencing homelessness told the Denver City Council Monday. I mean, how'd you expect these people to, run through all of this lickety-split without being a drag on the community? I mean, what did you think was going to happen? Amy Beck, who works with the migrants, said that they are erecting encampments as they are discharged from shelter. All day I've coordinated with families that have fallen to the street, she said, adding she has still not found them shelter because there's none available. The inn is full, right? The inn is full. There's only so many resources. Children, again, are living in tents with their parents, Beck said, with one large encampment growing near Elite Gardens. She said 8 tents joined the encampment Monday and 5 Sunday. She said case management is needed at the encampments. Well, case management is needed at the homeless encampments as well, which are rampant. So, you just going to give all the resources to the illegals? You're going to give some to the whacked out meth addicts and fentanyl addicts? How are you going to? It's a mess, right? This was a mess from the get-go. It's just a rolling disaster. We need to do something, Beck said, suggesting the city open another congregant shelter in a central location or eliminate shelter stay limits. Okay, so let's just run this through. All right, we're going to eliminate the shelter stay limits. Everybody can just stay there. So the shelters get full, right? Say you've got capacity, I don't know, call it 3,000. What happens when the next 2,000 illegals come through in the next 60-day period? Where do they go? Yeah. Good Lord. Yeah. How'd we handle it last time? We eliminated the shelter stay limits. Okay. But they're all full. All right. So do we, what about those 4 we closed up? Do we open up those and then no shelter stay limits there? Do we do that? Literally, you've got the blind leading the blind on this stuff, right? You guys joke about how Eric Adams has a 3rd grade reading level. And then let's go Brandon Johnston has that pointy haircut and he can't get out of his own way. It's so ridiculous. I have spent all day trying to put families back indoors, but there's nowhere to go, right? There's nowhere to go. Beck also said it would be helpful if the city did not discharge large numbers of people from shelters on the same day. this is a cluster. Nothing is happening in an organized fashion. This is not reasonable. That's why cities like Aurora are saying, we do not want this in our community. It's we can't afford it. We don't have the funds to take care of it. We don't want it. We don't believe it's good for our community. We don't know who these people are. They're not vetted. And at the same token, they are literally located next door to Denver, who's just, this virtue signaling big blue sanctuary city. And things are, not going all that well. We got to shut them down. We got to open them up. We got to close them off. We got to open them up. You don't know whether they're coming or going. That's the bottom line, right? The city plans to shut down 4 migrant hotel shelters in an effort to cut costs. Meanwhile, we should eliminate shelter stay limits. Okay. All right. Yeah. Right. The migrant response is expected to cost the city and county of Denver up to $120 million in 2024, even with the closures. Now, if you've already got an existing big budget deficit, $120 million, that doesn't help out. And these cities are on the hook for this for quite some time because it takes time for these illegals to kind of cycle through and get where they're finally going, wherever that may be. Do Better Denver. Have you guys checked out Do Better Denver? If you're on Instagram or you're on, I think it's X, Do Better Denver. Yeah, they're kind of like, trying to think of the equivalent. PDX Real down in Portland. It's kind of like, just showcasing some of the absolute shenanigans and tomfoolery that's happening on a daily basis. And I haven't seen a lot of those type. Somebody called me a social activist the other day, and I was like, I'm not a social activist. Meanwhile, I'm out there interviewing Andrea Suarez of We Heart Seattle. I see the point. But I don't see, they're activists, and I guess I kind of fulfill that. But when I think of activists, I think of Looney Tune, blue hair, really big, never miss a meal, and just talking about ridiculous stuff that is not based in reality. But then you've got kind of this reality activism as well. And that's where I would kind of say that I fall into. But you've got Do Better Denver. I love the name. Do Better Denver. Denver, do better. All right. Okay. Let's see what we got going on that they're saying that Denver needs to do better. They post video of Encampment. Johnston said last week that city officials were not seeing new encampments on the streets as the migrants begin to be discharged. But Beck's remarks Monday, as well as social media posts by Do Better Denver, have proven otherwise. Where are they going to go? If you dump out an entire shelter or 4 of them, where are those people going to go? I mean, you just don't have this happening in big Republican cities because the first thing they do is calculate the cost. All right, how much is that going to be per person? You think it's going to be that much? Good Lord, we can't afford that. We're already upside down in our budget. Hey guys, yeah, just decided we're not a sanctuary city. Nope, we're not doing that. Nope, I don't care. No, we're not doing that. No, we don't have the budget for it. No. That's what happens. And yet in these other cities like Denver, they just take them on. Because when you shut down 4 encampments, and even though the people have been leaving over the last couple of months, what do you think's going to go on? But Beck's remarks Monday, as well as social media posts by Do Better Denver, have proven otherwise. The citizen group Do Better Denver posted a video on X showing the tents around Illich Gardens. Now, I've looked at this. The issue, what I would say, it's we're going to look at it, but we're not going to watch the video. Because what I would say is these may or may not be shelters, tents that are housing illegal immigrants. I don't know. And without, having know exactly what that looks like, they could just be a bunch of homeless people. Or in the case of what I saw last Friday it was, over with Andrea Suarez and Tim of We Heart Seattle, so many of the encampments that you see standing are not occupied by anybody. They're literally there. The tents are there to do sex trafficking and shoot up drugs and smoke drugs, period. That's what they're there for. I mean, horrific, right? And that's why you got this squalor thing, because nobody's really living in them. They're just, everybody's girlfriend and then doing a bunch of drugs. So Mayor Mike Johnston, this is the post from Do Better Denver. Mayor Mike Johnston Co. has said to 9 News Denver, they have not seen an increase in the number of people living on the streets since changing their migrant discharge policy. Well, you had a bunch of people and then they went somewhere. Where did they go? Not into another shelter, because we know you're closing those down. So where are they going? They're going to the streets. So is this a realistic portrayal? You can watch that video if you want. Do Better Denver. I'm not going to. I looked at it and I thought that just looks like a bunch of tents at night. So if you want to watch a video of, a car going by a whole bunch of tents at night, that's the video for you. Discharges will be based on arrival date and occurring in rolling fashion, with every family receiving a written notification of their discharge date, according to the city's migrant website. All families with children will have received at least 42 days in shelter, with some families having been provided as long as 4 months. If you're a sanctuary city, shouldn't you be just housing these people for forever? Perpetuity? Isn't that what your sanctuary city status says? You're just going to take care of them forever? You're just going to have that kumbaya, hugging moment forever until they get worked out? This whole notion of, 4 months or 42 days, that was that part of your deal at the beginning when you were virtue signaling you're going to take everybody in? I don't think so, right? RV dwellers now living in tents. Beck said the city also has a problem with people living in RVs now living in tents. Beck said the city has been cracking down on RVs parked around town. The city passed a so-called Poverty 2 bill last May. Beck said those living in RVs that have been cited now live in tents in homeless encampments. Planning. You didn't do your planning, guys. And now you've got a situation where there is a massive demand for very limited resources. So what's going to happen? Shenanigans like we are seeing in Denver on the daily, right? And that's why you've got to do better, Denver. Mayor Mike Johnston has boasted that he has rid much of downtown Denver from encampments and housed 1,000 people with his House 1,000 campaign. But unfortunately for Johnston, House 1,000 came at a time hundreds of migrants became homeless, erasing gains in the area of encampment closures. I mean, we knew that was going to happen. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys, right? I don't need to tell you any of that. That's just what you've got going on. I mean, it is a knucklehead could see this coming from 100 miles away. And that's why most reasonable, most responsible communities, even communities in the state of Colorado, it's like there's communities in the state of Washington here that do not align with the blue hair and all the ridiculous, socialism going on in Seattle. There are communities here. They're few and far between, and most of them are east of the mountains. And, they're in more rural communities where people are self-reliant and they don't depend on a handout. They're not on the dole. They're not on the dole. But with Aurora, they've basically said, we don't want this. This is not our thing. You do have responsible communities out there, and that is highlighting the ridiculousness going on with these other self-proclaimed sanctuary cities that just can't work out, where their people are going. They don't know how many people they have. I mean, I was watching they don't know how many homeless people they have anyway. I was reading a thing about the San Francisco homeless encampment count, the PIT count, a point in time count. It's a count that has to be identified for federal funding for the homelessness, right? They're trying to work out, did you count them right? Did you double count that guy? They couldn't work out if their PIT count was correct. Let's do it over. No, it's good. It's fine. And you're like, who is running this dog and pony show? No wonder so much of this is just like, that is simply not reasonable. But I give credit to Aurora for just basically saying, hey, even though we're next door, get this stuff out of here. This is not our responsibility. We are not going down that road. So there you have it. Crazy stuff, right? I mean, we're in a time and we're a day and an age where city officials are making terrible decisions. It's in plain sight. And yet, nope, just shut down the migrant centers. It should be fine. Save us some big money. Yeah, but then you're leaving them all outside in Denver, through the winter. It's okay. It's all right. I mean, what are they going to do? Complain? Yeah, they just did in this article. But, when you've brought people in, I think they have a responsibility to take care of them. Doesn't matter what the budget is. If your budget goes sideways, that's on you for being a self-proclaimed sanctuary city. All right. I have beaten this one into the ground. So I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for being part of the podcast. Love to have you subscribe, do all that cool stuff, whatever it may be. You know what? Since we're kind of more free will people, if you don't want to subscribe, but still be here, that's fine too. Thanks for whatever you decide. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.